Hey Achievers, this is Maya, founder of Healthy High Achievers. Join our global community and create healthier routines to avoid burnout and feel more calm and healthy. Let's get to it. Hey Achievers, so happy to have you with us today. We're having Mireille here. She's a functional medicine coach, just like myself. And we did go to different schools. And Mireille, I think I can say you went all the way into becoming our go-to for digestion and nutrition, which is why I wanted to talk to you today. You're in Switzerland, right?
That's right. Yeah, I've been
Okay.
living in Switzerland for almost 14 years now. Yeah, originally from South Africa.
All right, from South Africa to Switzerland, me from Belgium to Peru. So these interviews are always very international. But I feel like the functional medicine community is always very connected over the whole world. Keeps expanding, luckily. Yeah. So Mireille, she has a nutrition reboot program and a gut repair program. And today she's the perfect person to help you, my dear Achievers, to learn the basics about digestion, what to do if you feel like your digestion's kind of off for a while, some foods that you can tolerate, or maybe you're feeling more gassy and you just think, oh, I'm just a gassy person. You know, you must get that a lot, Mireille. What is your reaction to a comment like this?
Well, I actually get a little bit of both. So you have a camp of people who have a lot of symptoms unrelated to the gut. So like they have no digestive issue, no gas, no bloating, none of that, like pregnant feeling, and no diarrhea, etc., or constipation. But they have all these other symptoms, like they might have autoimmune disease, they might have skin issues, they might have brain fog. So then there's a long list of other symptoms that could be drawn back to an imbalanced gut. And so there's that one camp, and then you've got the other camp where there's a very obvious gut issue. So that's the gas, the bloating, even the reflux issues, or the diarrhea and constipation. So these are very clear gut digestive candidates. And so they go out and they seek a solution for gut repair, right? Or to something to do with their guts. Whereas the other camp of people are saying, like, how do I solve my chronic condition, whatever it might be, whether it's skin, or even joint pain for that matter. And often we come back to the gut.
Yeah, so when someone has skin issues, in my story with fibromyalgia, I had muscle aches. So of course, doctors didn't think about the gut or the liver in the end was my problem when they hear muscle aches. So how do people then end up finding you?
Probably mostly by word of mouth, though I have been focusing more on a group of people which have a similar story to mine, which was chronic urticaria, which is a very obvious skin rash, hives all over the body. And that I struggled with for very many years. And I think a lot of people also now post-vaccine struggle with some symptoms of hives. But for a lot of these people, they're going to their dermatologists or allergists looking for solutions, thinking that they're allergic to a food. And really, it's the immune system responding to a number of different things. Food is one, but there are also toxins, there's stress, there are infections. And so that's why I'm focusing a lot more on people that I know I can help them because I have a similar journey and they relate to me better because we have a similar story.
Yeah, interesting. And there's also that saying, when in doubt, start with the gut. Right.
Exactly. So yeah. What we say about the skin is like the skin is a mirror of your gut as well. So anything that is showing on your skin, whether it be psoriasis or eczema, any rashes on the skin, is usually a reflection of what your gut looks like.
Yeah, and I think we often forget that. Sometimes when I start getting like a bit more rash or pimples or something on my skin, it's probably mostly for me, it's right after drinking Coca-Cola or eating more processed foods or just having more toxins that my body can't handle at that moment.
Yeah, it's that inflammation, right?
Yeah. So someone who's like, okay, I do have some digestive issues, but a doctor just said that it's irritable bowel syndrome, and I think there's nothing I can do about it, and maybe I need to avoid some foods or do FODMAP. But then I get too restricted. Where can they start? What can you do?
Yeah, it's a great question. And to be honest, I always do start with food. It's the fastest way, I think, for a lot of people to change things, because it's something that they're putting into their bodies every single day, 3 times a day at least, right? And so for a lot of us coaches, we're starting with the basics of an anti-inflammatory diet, just making sure at least that those bases are covered, because you cannot help a person to restore function in their bodies, let alone their gut health, if they're not feeding their body with the right nutrients. So the first port of call is always to make sure that they're eating the right nutrients. So taking the time to ensure that they're getting lots of vegetables, clean protein, healthy fats, anti-inflammatory foods, and removing the foods that would be causing inflammation. So typically it would be the gluten, the dairy, the top 5 allergens, maybe eggs, soy, corn, those kinds of things. And that would be the starting point. And yes, for a lot of people, it's a big step away from the way they're eating now.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be like the one reason that they're struggling with these issues in the first place. So for some people, just changing their diet alone can do a lot to relieve their symptoms. And for others, they would have to take the next step, which is why I offer the 2 kind of pillars, which is the reboot, which is the nutrition, as well as then the follow-on step, which is the rebuilding of the gut.
Yeah, interesting. Do you feel like people need to first eliminate those foods and test that out and then do a gut repair program?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to repair the gut if you're continuously throwing at it something that's causing inflammation.
Yeah.
So for me, it's important to try and identify the things that are causing inflammation. So it's either by doing an elimination diet, or like the Institute for Functional Medicine has a prescription elimination diet where we're taking out the most important allergens and inflammation causing foods. Yes, that is what I would say is the most important part, to just calm the inflammation. You can test as well. That's another option, I think, for some people. But the gold standard has always been what we call the elimination diet.
Yeah, and I feel like there are 2 main groups of people. The group of people who can get themselves to do that, and then the group of people who go too far in it. And I was certainly one of the second group, I must say.
Really?
In my own journey, when I found out about all the, natural foods and just the real good smoothies for breakfast and the salads, and I wanted to change my diet, and I went way too far. So I started I went 180 degrees, the other way. And then I got even more gut issues.
Oh, that's
because I went too
So
far.
what were you doing? I'd love to hear. What kind of things were you doing? Because I do hear about these things. People that go raw vegan, for instance.
Yeah. So really, I went from a very normal, like lots of gluten, lots of starchy foods or carbs. And I went to the completely other side where, I heard so many things about smoothies. I was like, oh, it's really good to put maca in there, which is easy in Peru, right? It's really good to put protein powder and then some peanut butter, and then I'll put some avocado in it, and then I'll put also a spoon of coconut oil. So you see, I went way too far with all the ingredients, which was way too much fat and protein all of a sudden. It was a change that was way too big. And so I couldn't digest it because it was too different from where I was.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then I said, oh, okay, an elimination diet. Good, I'll do one. And I bought the book, The Elimination Diet. Who's the writer? I'll put it in the show notes. But I did it with the book, but they leave out everything, like even all nuts and all kinds of meats and just everything, basically. And I went way too far in that. So I didn't feel a clear sign because I had SIBO too. I mean, I had other gut issues too. I didn't see clear symptoms for me when I was reintroducing. So I had no idea what it was. So then I did go for a test because I had no clear
Yeah.
clear signals for my body. What was it like for you, that journey of elimination?
Same. I think there are also the camps of people that have a very good body sense and can tell, like, if they introduce a food, how they're responding. And the key is that they should be looking not only for gut issues, they should be looking for all kinds of things. So it could be just kind of a restlessness or a tiredness. And we're not all sensitive to these changes, these subtle changes, to be able to notice that a food is bothering us. And that's why I felt like I was that kind of person, or that I was a little bit impatient to reintroduce foods. And so I also felt like I needed to see the data. I'm very much a logical person and like to see data. And so I did food sensitivity tests as well. And that, combined with doing an elimination diet, for me was enough information to say, okay, I know what to take out. But I've done elimination diets now several times and had experience with many different ones. And so I feel like the more you do them as well, the more you get to know your body.
That's interesting. That's because they also say it's good to do it once a year, to just as kind of gut cleanse, to leave out some kind of foods. But we are a society that got used to going to the doctor, doing a test, and then seeing something on a piece of paper, and then we have our answers, you know? So that's the challenging part about doing something where you actually, let's say, listen to your body. You listen to your body's signals as your feedback, as your test results. It's such a mindset shift. How do you help people in that?
Yeah, that body sense is something you have to learn to develop over time. And it's not something everybody is used to, that you just get right off the bat. Especially for a lot of my clients, I feel like I attract a lot of clients who are very much on the scientific analytical side, because I'm that kind of person. And also we don't have the patience always. But our body is giving us signs all the time. And when we do take the time to listen and tune into them, then we are much better aware than a test can tell us, right? So even tests and that's what I tell my clients as well, tests are not 100% foolproof. Maybe you get a 70 or 80% kind of result or data there, but it's not picking up everything. And that's where we should be more in tune with things that are happening to us every day, and just stop and listen.
Yeah, and interpreting it in a whole, right? I remember after my elimination diet, I did a SIBO test because I had to go one layer further. And SIBO, basically, for people who don't know it, it's small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So it's just bacteria where they're not supposed to be, and they're way too much. That's the summary.
Exactly.
I had these ups and downs in my bowel movements, and it was a whole chaos. There were no patterns. And I did the elimination diet, and after that I did the test, and the test actually came back negative if you look at the range that it should have to be positive. But my functional medicine doctor said, it probably was positive a month ago before you started eliminating, but you've you've taken oregano, you've taken all these supplements, and you've done the elimination diet, and probably your SIBO has already gone down to this point. So when you look at it as a whole, let's interpret it as positive and let's treat it anyway. And that's kind of what helped me in those first layers of the journey. So really just taking that whole approach instead of just relying whatever the test says at that moment.
Exactly, because you would have stopped there if you just believed the test said negative, right? And that's what I also say. We need to go with your symptoms as well. So if you still have symptoms, you still need to keep digging. And even if a test comes back negative, and I've had gut tests where certain bacteria, which we know are good at hiding, like H. pylori, I tend to treat as if it's still there, because it's a lot more reliable when you knock it back to a certain level. And so, that's also something that I try to not just depend on what the data is saying.
Yeah, that makes sense. And even when you want to decide, should I do this test? Should I not do this test? I know many people who come to me and say, hey, Maya, I really want to start working on these skin issues or my, brain fog and my extreme fatigue. I want to go to a functional medicine doctor. And they're like, how much is it? They say. And I'm like, well, and I found that answer difficult in the beginning for me, but I say the same now to people. It depends on you.
Yeah, exactly.
You could do
And it
all the
depends on the
tests in the
doctor. It
world.
depends on what
Yeah.
kind of doctor you get, right? And how much they want to promote a particular test or the test that they feel most comfortable with. And so, yeah, I also say that you can do a lot without these expensive tests.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I give the example always of, when I did invest at the later stages of my journey, I did invest in a test that checks toxins and heavy metals in my body. And that's when we found that my fibromyalgia came from my liver full of toxins. And I did not have the glutathione or the enzyme to detoxify. So it's good that we found that, but I was hesitating. Should I do a mold test? And mold tests are expensive. And I said, oh, but this test was expensive already. Should I do mold? And then my functional medicine practitioner was like, when we look at your timeline, your story, we know you had mold issues in your house. There was mold, So if we assume that there is still mold in
there's
your
a mold
body,
issue. Do we even need a test?
We're going to detoxify the heavy metals anyway. So if we assume there's mold as well, we just take that into account, we do it. And then you don't need to invest all that money in these tests. And that made sense in my head of like, okay, do we in the end, and that goes back to the mindset part, do we need to see everything on a piece of paper when really it's clear when we look at our story or our history, it shows.
Yeah, that timeline is really key to give us clues on things. And the timeline, it brings me to another point that is not something that we pick up in tests at all, is the whole emotional factor. So what on the timeline that doesn't have to do with an infection or toxicity or, a food, etc. But maybe there's something else on the timeline that has predisposed them to become more susceptible to certain things. And that I find is also something that's not addressed by many functional medicine practitioners because we're not really trained in that area, right?
Yeah.
Dealing with trauma and stresses. Yeah,
absolutely. And sometimes I hear doctors say like, no, it's all in your head. It's all stress. It comes from stress.
Yeah. Partly,
yes. But then the other part might also be physical. So it's often a combination of things. And what was that like in your journey? What came from an emotional side? What were your triggers?
Absolutely. And so that's my approach, is always to do a combination, is to understand what's on the timeline, to have the clinical approach. But if the clinical approach doesn't yield results, we have to dig deeper, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so going back to, let's say there's someone listening now that's like, I think I need to start this journey, but they're really on the start, they're still eating the way that we're eating before, maybe more processed foods or more bread, and not really eliminating anything, or maybe still have sugar in their diet, but they listen to this and they're like, oh, an elimination diet, it's so much work. Do I need to start this whole journey? It sounds long, it sounds complicated. Where can they start with something like eeny meeny tiny something?
Eeny meeny tiny. Yeah, look, I'm a fan of breaking things up into small bits. And so for me, the first steps would be to practice that muscle of removing gluten and dairy. Those would be the first two things that I would remove. Sure, there's a lot. If you're on a completely processed diet and you're eating a lot of processed and ready-made foods, the first step would just to start eating more whole natural foods, right? Just start introducing one fruit or one vegetable with each meal kind of story, and just getting more of those healthy natural foods. But if you're already at that stage and you feel like you're eating fairly healthy, but you're not too sure what, then removing something like a gluten or dairy and just start looking for alternatives and substitutes. That's kind of how I started. I first didn't believe it, right? And then I thought, okay, maybe I'll give it a try, and realize that for me back then it was really hard to take a step away from bread and things like that. But the first step's always finding those first substitutes, and once you find those, just a handful of substitute foods, then you're halfway there, because it's a muscle, and it's something that you need to experiment with. But I always say it starts with a decision that this is something I want to do. This is something that's important to me, and why, and finding out the why this is important to me. Because without those things, a decision and a why, you're not going to move from the spot you're in.
Yeah, and really reaching that point of decision of, okay, I want to do this for myself. I want to feel better, and I want to do this as an experiment, like you said. And I love how you mention adding, because people who get scared of eliminating, it's nice to focus on adding when you say, hey, look for substitutes. First, open your eyes and open your possibilities to whatever you find that can substitute.
Absolutely.
And adding some vegetables and some extra proteins or whatever, just adding more natural foods on every plate and going from there.
Yeah. Look, I think, you and I being health coaches and having lived this lifestyle for a lot longer, I can say that from my perspective, I kind of lose sight of how difficult it was in the beginning to make the switch. And so, yes, that whole idea of adding rather than subtracting is a much easier thing to deal with. It's just, let's start crowding out the bad things with all the good things. So just add a lot more of the good things, and the bad things will hopefully automatically just start to diminish. And once you get these nutrients, the cravings start to diminish too.
Yeah, I did have this client once he started adding on more vegetables and like all kinds of colors, in the vegetables, just a lot of variety. And, he did eat very like processed meals, processed things, a lot of sugar as well, a lot of soda, everything. But he started adding more and more natural foods, and he actually started feeling better about himself. So it wasn't about, oh, I need to leave that. I need to stop eating that. Because sometimes when we think I need to stop, then we do the whole opposite, and we just order a whole pizza with a Coca-Cola one night. And we're even worse off than we were before. But when they start focusing on just adding more healthy foods and really looking at your plate and thinking, what am I fueling my body right now? What am I giving to myself right now? And when I made that switch, I remember in the very beginning, I made that switch for myself of, okay, what am I feeding my body? And I looked at my plate, and I would realize, okay, maybe these cookies, they're really good, but they're not feeding me. I do have my craving anyway. I'll eat them anyway. But what in this whole day, what am I feeding myself? And then I would realize, I had a lot of, I had a lot of starchy food. I had a lot of rice, and I had a lot of, I didn't really have vegetables. I didn't really have fats. Okay, let's add in more. And I remember I used that, I can put it in the show notes too, kind of that meal plan of IFM, where you can really see what's fats, what's proteins, what's vegetables, gives you all these kinds of ideas of what you use. And I just started looking at it, asking myself, okay, I think I don't have much of this category. What can I add to my meal? Maybe one teaspoon of olive oil, and that's that, before I didn't realize what's the value of a teaspoon of olive oil, what's the value of those things. But you see the portions, and you're like, okay, I can add in more this and that. Did you start the same way, or what was it like for you with mindset, how you thought about food?
Yeah, I think I was a little bit like you in the sense that I kind of jumped in with with the gluten, and once I decided, okay, I'm going to give this a go, and I removed the gluten and dairy, I needed to find, a healthy substitute. And my healthy substitute for my breakfast was smoothies as well. And so I started just with a hand mixer, mixing spinach and apple, and that was the way I started, and just realizing that I was not getting nearly enough fruits and vegetables in my day, right? So I don't know what you say, but I say that we should be striving for 6 to 9 fistfuls of fruits and vegetables, and that's colored different, all the different colors. And I was probably only getting mine at my main meal, maybe 2, maximum 3 fistfuls. And so to get up to 6, I don't know how else to do it other than doing it with smoothies, right? Because there you're getting already a good number of fistfuls of fruits and vegetables as well.
Yeah, and that reminds me actually of a moment where I realized that actually I needed to eat more.
Okay.
I wasn't really leaving. It wasn't really about leaving out stuff or stop eating certain things. I started counting, right? Hey, how many handfuls do I have of that? Or do I have enough proteins and fats? And I realized I did not. I did have too many carbs, but I didn't have enough vegetable carbs, right? And just fruits was fine because we don't need that much of it, but the vegetables was a big issue for me. And I was like, all right, and then you need to get creative, and then you're focusing on, again, what we're saying, you're focusing on adding on. How can what are the tricks? Smoothie is a trick, soup is a trick. How can I add on more of those vegetables? And then I started, I don't know, looking at these vegetable snacks that I actually really liked, because there's even things where you put cinnamon on and then it gets kind of like with a sweet touch. So there's so many like creative ways to add on more vegetables, but it's like you said, it's the start. It's the start that's the hardest. And in the start, I love that tip that you said of just look for substitutes. Just start there. Look for something that you can add on.
Yeah,
that's where you can start. Yeah.
And I think the whole accountability thing, because a lot of people feel like they're the only ones doing this, right? So joining a group of people that are doing something very similar, or in a group program, for instance, and that's why I run the group Elimination Diets, because I know that on your own to do a whole elimination is hard, right? If you're the only one in your family and you feel like you're only cooking for yourself, and then you've got to cook another meal for somebody else, right? But whereas there's a lot of knowledge and creativity that comes within a group when everyone's striving towards the same goal, there are a lot of ideas that come up with that, and a lot of inspiration that people can glean from other participants.
Yeah, absolutely. That just finding someone who wants to do it with you, and then you can kind of support each other. And I remember I did my elimination diet with my mom, and she was like, okay, yeah, I'll join you, fine, because there were these recipes and she likes testing out recipes. So we did it together during pandemic, or like, oh yeah, playing around with food because there was nothing else to do. And just finding that person you can do it with, that supports.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What I was just thinking, I love how in this whole conversation, we haven't really talked about weight, have we?
No, and that's kind of how I started when I started nutrition coaching, is that I had people coming to me for weight loss. And what I've learned over the time is those who are seeking weight loss don't have a strong enough why they need to lose the weight, or why they want to lose the weight. They have to really dig deep for a strong reason to lose 2 to 5 kilos maybe. But the other thing is that, from the functional medicine perspective, weight is just another symptom. It's a symptom of inflammation in the body, and it's a symptom of your body saying, oh, not everything's, in balance, and that's why I need to hold on to this weight, because I'm worried that maybe I don't get what I need. So I always tell my clients that say weight is one of their goals, that weight is a symptom, and once we address all the imbalances, the weight will come off on its own.
Oh, I love that kind of shift, and I hope people heard this part, because that's, I think, very key, where you say that weight is just another symptom, just as the others. And once you fix those imbalances, that weight will go off like nothing. Right?
Like nothing. Yeah. Yeah.
I love this conversation. I think people have a lot already to think of, think about, to start with, mini tiny steps, right? And you know, if anyone's just struggling with this, you can contact me, you can contact Mireille. And Mireille, where can people find more about you, and what are you working on right now?
Well, they can find me on Instagram, though I'm not a big fan of posting either in Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. I do have a website, which is functionalmedicinecoach.ch for Switzerland. But I am currently running a gut program at the moment, and that's about an 8-week program where we deal with certain bacteria and rebuilding the gut from the top down. And that is one thing that I think a lot of people are missing, is addressing not just the intestinal area where there might be an imbalance in gut bacteria like SIBO, etc., but why did it start in the first place? And so top down chewing, stomach, digestion is a big part of my gut program, and helping people understand that it's not just about taking probiotics. It's about getting to why it developed in the first place.
Yeah, sometimes we like to think there's just a pill and then stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so and upcoming, I've got my reboot, which is starting in May, around May 23rd, I think, and that's then a group elimination program. So for those who are not feeling like they're ready to do it on their own and want the guidance of somebody who has done it several times before, and to do it in a group, that's the right vehicle.
I'll definitely post that link as well. I can create even an event on healthyhighachievers.community for your program. People can join, because I think it's great to do it in group. I did it in group. I was also leading groups for elimination diets. And it's such a rich experience where you learn from each other. You have someone trained in functional medicine to guide you through it. You have other people to get ideas from, to kind of, hey, I don't know how to change this for that, or how to substitute this. And then you just give each other ideas. So, and I think it's great what you say, to really go upstream, and not only probiotics, or not only truly the gut, but also stomach, chewing, you know, mindset, it all goes, you know, why you're doing this. So love that you're doing that with groups of people. I'll definitely put it in the show notes and on healthyhighachievers.community. And thank you so much for your time, Mireille. This was great.
Perfect. You're welcome. It's been great chatting to you, Maya. Thanks so much.
See you. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Dear Achievers, I hope you liked this episode. If you did, please subscribe and share with your friends, anyone who needs to hear this. You're super welcome to join us at healthyhighachievers.community as well. See you there.